I apologize. I've had the mic off for this whole fucking time. So, I'm gonna go ahead and backtrack and start over from the beginning. Let's see here. Let's see if the I don't even know if I had audio coming in at the beginning. God damn it. I'm just fucking up today. So anyway, if you're tuning in, thank you. I've had the audio off up to this point. I think I played a little clip of a record at the beginning, but I think it probably didn't come through either. I just realized that the mic was muted on here. Um, anyway, it's a Culture Clash Live. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Selecta J-Cut. This is Jim on my lap. She loves to be in the studio room with me. Right. Anyway, today I'm discussing a band that was a big influence to me when I was a preteen, teenager. The Dead Kennedys. I was saying that this morning my fiance she listens to a lot of political punditry, so that's kind of what I hear before she goes to work in the morning. And I mean, I like to stay aware politically, but at the same time, when you hear the same, the punditry, it kind of gets to me after a while. Not that I disagree with them politically or anything, just that when I think of all the bullshit in the world, it just it fucks up my day. So I'm trying to, but anyway, that was kind of the mood I got into this morning, where I remember what it was. It was actually a Tucker Carlson piece that somebody was playing, and I just thought, kill the poor, as soon as she left for work, I'd start my cleaning and things, and I went and got all my Dead Kennedys records, and I started with Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, which is the debut LP. And it was a really, really cathartic experience for me. I mean, I listen to those records once in a while. I've rebought most of those records from, I bought them when I was a teenager and went through phases older in life, and then he come back around to it. I was like, oh, I need to hear Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, or I need to hear the one I'm going to talk about first today, Plastic Surgery Disasters, which I had played a little clip from the intro. It's if anybody's ever heard the album, it starts with kind of a noise track with this lady talking about, why are you such a stupid asshole? Would you really like to know? And she kind of breaks down all the day-to-day society things that that we do, what's expected of us in society, and how we comply to these things. And anyway, yeah, so the story that I was telling before I realized that my mic was muted is, so I'm about 12 years old, and this is about 1984. I had just gotten out of 6th grade, going into 7th grade, and I'd been into what I thought of at that time as punk, because it was, my knowledge was pretty limited at that time, but I was listening to Devo and Talking Heads and basically things from MTV. I was a big David Bowie fan for sure, which I've always been a big David Bowie fan, but I got into him at an early age. And Adam Ant was another big influence. The reason I bring him up is because that kind of led me to the Sex Pistols, because he had referred to them as his biggest influence in a few interviews. And so I started looking into the Sex Pistols and got into Public Image Limited, and then I started hearing about hardcore and getting curious about that. And one of the first bands that I heard of, there were the Black Flags and Circle Jerks and things, but the Dead Kennedys was, I believe, was the first hardcore band I really heard of. And so summer 1984, not Tower, I'm getting my locations mixed up, Houston, Kansas City. Bought this. Remember, at the same time, I had bought Public Image Limited's second edition, which I think I pulled out to talk about too. So just gonna give it a quick mention, because these are records that I bought at the same time. This was obviously a year or two older, but I was actually in this looking for This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get, and the guy that worked at Seventh Heaven's like, well, we don't have that, but he's like, this album is really good. He's like, it's real percussive. I can't remember how he described it to me, but he definitely said percussive, and I was a drummer, so that got my interest right away. I was already a John Lydon fan, and I had first issue already, but I'd heard Bad Life, and I was wanting to get that album. Anyway, so I got this one, and I also bought the Clash's debut album at that time. I just read a book on like 1977, the UK punk explosion, and it led me to want to get the Clash's first album, which I was familiar with the Clash already, but that was like the most punk, the most raw album from them. I like the Clash a lot. Their later albums are also a lot more developed, and but that first one, it was real. I get a lot of catharsis from listening to that album too, particularly White Man in Hammersmith Palace. That's one tune that always gets me. Anyway, back to the Dead Kennedys. So yeah, I bought this. I remember it said on the back, and this isn't the original copy. I've since sold it probably when I was 18 or so, and I had to buy it again. And I know the story about the band basically screwing over Jello, and I felt bad about buying a repress. I want to get an original copy of it, but it's pricey. Anyway, but as I was saying, the booklet, I didn't get the booklet with it, and I know on the back of the record it said to go back to the store and demand one, and I didn't do it. Seventh Heaven was a long ways from my house, and I had a single mom, so it's like, I couldn't really just, Mom, take me down to Seventh Heaven. She wasn't going to drive down to the city just to get a book that didn't come with my record, so I never got the booklet. I wasn't going to be a Karen, and go into Seventh Heaven, but Seventh Heaven, if you guys are listening, then you owe me a book from Plastic Surgery Disasters. Yeah, so anyway, I got this home. I remember my friend Brian from around the block he came to my house, and I showed him the record, and we opened it up, and that intro was like, wow, this is really wild stuff, because it definitely they were well, on into the record, they appealed to my the Devo and my Devo fandom, like the sound of the music and everything. The lyrics, I didn't really necessarily understand the first, when I was listening to this one in particular, because I didn't have the booklet that came with it. So there were a few, there were songs that you could understand on here. Terminal Preppy that was one that got me right away. But Riot was that was an impactful song, definitely. And just the titles, Bleed for Me, and Government Flu, Buzz Bomb. Well, not necessarily. Halloween was a good one that got me. Anyway, so yeah, this whole album it was my introduction to hardcore for sure. Although it's not a typical, it's not a typical thrash all the way through. The instrumentation was always so diverse with the Dead Kennedys. They always had the kind of the surfy sound, or the the Western, a lot of influences. The same way you get in reggae or hip hop. It's like music's always going to be, to me, best when it's comprised of component parts. That's it's built up out of previously things that were good. So anyway, this was the first one I got. Was enjoying that into my 7th grade year. That's when we started getting into hardcore. Like I think the Repo Man soundtrack was one of the next hardcore records that I heard, and that got us into Black Flag, Circle Jerks, Fear. No, Germs weren't on that. Anyway, there were a couple other Suicidal Tendencies, of course. Yeah, but anyway, the next album I heard from them was going to be, let's get these right quick, In God We Trust Incorporated. Turn this light on too. And I was starting to get them a little bit more at this point. You got the obviously rather satirical album cover mocking the religion and big business and everything. And I was, getting to an age where I was starting to think about things like that. And this, I would say, these albums probably boosted me in that direction for sure. Yeah, I think that I would definitely have to say that my way of thinking in life was definitely influenced by Jello Biafra in a big way. After that, probably Chuck D. When I started listening to Public Enemy, and when I was 16, 17, that's when like hardcore was like. I was into so many other different new things. I was listening to like industrial and those hip hop stuff like Public Enemy and BDP, De La Soul that was coming up. I was starting to get into dancehall because I'd been a reggae head, but it was like, in the Midwest, not a whole lot of dancehall, not a whole lot of means to hear that sort of thing. But there was a record store One Drop that we'd go to, and they'd always have like the Clint Eastwood records or Lone Ranger. I was always fascinated by all these Western titles. But anyway, back to the subject at hand here, the Dead Kennedys. My friend Brian got this one on cassette before I had picked it up, and I was very envious. But anyway, at least I got to hear it, and it was yeah, like I said, a lot more direct. Like I think I don't remember if the lyrics were on the cassette or not. Somehow I saw, maybe I looked at the record in the store and saw all the lyrics or something, but I was able to get a better understanding where they were coming from. And one like Nazi punks fuck off, that's a pretty blatant message there. I could tell that Jello was very ironic and sarcastic in a lot of his lyrics, but that was one that was pretty direct. We got a bigger problem. That was a little jab at Reagan there, in which luckily I was a product of a single mother in the 80s, and she was not a Reagan fan, so that worked out for me well in the punk rock era, because she didn't care that I had sticker on my skateboard that had Reagan with 666 on his forehead and horns that says "Let them eat jelly beans." Or remember when I got into JFA, my mom asked me, "What's that stand for?" And I told her Jodie Foster's Army. I didn't know. I knew Jodie Foster was an actress. I had no idea that Hinckley had, she was the inspiration for him to shoot Reagan or anything. But I remember my mom laughed. She's like, "That's funny." And I was like, "Why?" And then she told me, and I thought, I guess so. So luckily for me, my mom was not a Reagan fan. She probably wouldn't have really liked me being into punk if that were the case. Religious vomit. Luckily, I was not raised in a religious household either. Although I was near the Bible Belt growing up, so it was definitely, I was exposed to it more than I'd like to be. But I'm not saying that everybody that's religious is bad. So don't, if you're religious, don't take my negativity towards religion as anything towards you personally. But it's just that it's just the way I was experienced life, more or less. Is I'm not into religion, particularly right-wing Christianity. So, but while I'm on the topic of Let Them Eat Jelly Beans, there's the Alternative Tentacles compilation, which was Alternative Tentacles was basically the Dead Kennedys label. I mean, a lot of bands were signed to it, but Jello more or less ran it. I think he usually had a partner, but I don't know. I don't know enough about that topic to really even discuss it. But I remember on the Tales from the Trial cassette, I think he had said something about his girlfriend was managing it with him or something, but I don't remember. I could definitely have that twisted. I could have misinterpreted or misremembered, I guess I should say. Anyway, yeah, let's had Nazi Punks Fuck Off on it, which this was exposure to a whole host of different alternative bands from the time. I didn't at the time. I probably didn't really get like a lot of the bands on the B side of this one. I'd skip. There were some that I liked. I always liked Christian Lunch's Jokes on You. Half Japanese was always pretty cool. Corporate Food by Anonymous. That's almost like a experimental industrial type track. It's pretty cool. Some, maybe Residence-ish. Jezza X, Isotope Soap. Yeah, like I think I always liked the B side, but a lot of my friends that were into skateboarding and thrash were more like they wanted to hear that. So, Feeders, Jesus Entering from the Rear. That was always a fun one for me. Some of my friends didn't necessarily like that track, but I always thought it was funny. Get to the debut LP, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. This one I had to rebuy this one too. I'd remember I'd had my sister pick it up for me down at, I think it was at Penny Lane, or probably Penny Lane Records in KC. I'd call them and they had it in stock, so I had them put it on hold for me, and she lived downtown, so she went and picked it up for me. Kill the Poor is just that's like the satire, the irony at its best from Jello, I think. Yeah. Chemical Warfare, all these songs are just very high quality punk rock stuff. I would play the album for you, but I don't want to get a copyright strike, so I won't. Anyway, this one, they always had really cool posters, which once I got to know them when I was young, I really regretted not going back to the store and demanding that book from Plastic Surgery Disasters, rather. I believe it's Winston Smith, if I'm not mistaken, is ours, that usually does the artwork. Really cool collage. A lot of bizarre clippings and things, and then you got the lyrics down at the bottom. Yeah, so this one I was really you got songs like I Killed Children, which obviously that's a ironic, not a serious song, but at the time when I was when I first listened to it, I'm like, had to sit there like, is this guy serious? But I knew basically where they were coming from. I knew that Jello was politically involved, that he had run for mayor. I remember reading that. That was one of the first things that I learned about them. But I remember reading, I don't know if this is fact or not, but I remember reading that one of his proposed policies was to force businessmen to wear clown suits. I remember there was some more practical ones too, but that was one that I always thought was pretty good. Like I said, that could be something that I've twisted over time too. I didn't research that recently or anything, but I do remember reading that. I'm trying to remember the source. Speaking of sources, there's a magazine article, if anybody knows of. It's I believe a Rip magazine from the 80s that had an interview with Jello right after the Frankenchrist trial. And I remember there was a picture, he had the Constitution, it's like he was flashing, but he had the Constitution draped around him, but, or no, the Bill of Rights, I'm sorry, not the Constitution. Anyway, yeah, but I had that magazine when I was a kid, and I've looked for it online, I can never find it. I thought it was Rip, R.I.P., but it might have been I might be conflating two different magazines, it might be a different one. If anybody knows, put it in the link, put it in the comments. I'll just mention this one briefly. This is the Too Drunk to Fuck single. I bought this from my friend Omar not too long ago, but I did had these songs on the compilation, Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death, which that was a later, I don't actually have that one right now, but I remember that one came with a flexi disc with a tune called Night of the Living Rednecks. That was pretty cool. But the album itself was it was like a compilation. It had like the singles. It had Too Drunk to Fuck. It had The Prey. It had God, I'm trying to. It's been so long since I've listened. There's a song called "I Like Short Songs," "Man with the Dogs." Yeah, I don't know what B-sides or what singles or whatever they were all from, but or even remember everything that was on it. There was a pretty good one on there called "Pull My Strings." It was a live performance that they were supposed to be doing at California Uberalos, I think, at some new wave awards show, and they come out and they had S's on their. All the band members had S's on their shirts. They had like the button up. This was in the new wave, the knack days. They had the button up shirts and they had S's on them, and then they start playing and then they stop the song. They all flip their ties around and it's makes a dollar sign with the tie, with the S in the tie, and they play the song called "Pull My Strings" about being an industry shill, basically. I'd like to see a live performance, actually, a video of that. I don't think any exists. Well, who knows? Maybe they do, but I've definitely never heard of anybody having it. So I don't have a lot of the singles. I was like, it's pretty much the only single that I have. So I'm not really going to talk about all the others. Nazi Punk's Fuck Off 7, that should be a real cool one to show you. But this is Frankenchrist. Now, when this album came out, I was a big Dead Kennedys fan. Like, they were, I'd say by this time I was probably saying they were my favorite group, or definitely top 2 or 3. And this one came out, of course, they had the infamous Giger poster, H.R. Giger poster in it. And I bought it when it was new. I remember my mom's second husband, they were actually already divorced at the time, but he's a really cool guy. It's just he stuck around for me, basically. He's been like a dad for me all my life, even though he and my mom only stayed together for a few years. So anyway, that he bought me this record. I remember it had the warning label on the front, and he's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Well, that usually has some, political stuff. I figure it might be something graphic, like somebody's hand blown off, or some pictures from war or something, And I get it home, and I don't think I showed him. But I opened it up, and it's like, oh, wow, this is not what I expected. So I remember I did show it to my mom, and she didn't try to press charges or anything. She was just like, oh, that is gross. But that was about the extent of that. And at the time, I remember, 'cause I was a teenager. I wasn't going to hang a poster with a bunch of dicks on my wall. I was probably maybe a little homophobic, I don't know, but I definitely wasn't going to hang that poster on my wall for whatever reason. And I cut because I had Dead Kennedys logos all around the border, and I was like, I want that border though. So I cut the border off, and I think I don't remember if I made a collage inside of it or what. I think that's what I did, or at least that's what I intended to do. But anyway, so this one I've rebought it since then. And this one does have the poster in it too. I wanted to buy a copy that had it just because I always felt stupid about cutting that poster up after all the controversy and everything, because then they had to stop pressing it, and I knew that. I mean, even what little knowledge I had at that time, I could tell that it was probably going to be worth money one day. But anyway, that was live and learn. So I think when I bought this one, I think I got a pretty good deal on an original copy with the poster. I think I paid 20 or no more than 30 for it at the time. I don't remember. It's been a while. But I've seen them go for quite a bit. And this one, I would say that I really like this album. It's more experimental, kind of psychedelic garage sound, not like super fast, high adrenaline. So some of my skate punk friends weren't really as much into this one. I always dug it. Songs like what was it, Goons of Hazard, and I think this one had Stars and Stripes of Corruption on it, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, just Stars and Stripes of Corruption, Soup is Good Food, Hell Nation. I mean, it's a quality record. I think it's definitely stood the test of time, but there was a lot of controversy. I won't say controversy. It was just me and my friends basically we were just teenage kids, but they were into more like thrash type stuff, and which I was into too, but I was cool with slowing the tempo down. I was always a reggae head too, so I was always cool with lower tempos, and so this one I always dug it. I played it a lot, and then when I got in my industrial phase, whatever, 18, 19 or so, I think when I moved to Arizona, I actually no, now that I think about it, I think I gave most of my Dead Kennedys records to my sister when I moved out here, and then I think she ended up giving some of them away. But anyway, so I definitely repurchased them over the years. That Time for Democracy, this was after they had split up, I believe this one came out. And this kind of back to the more raw, hardcore kind of sound in a lot of ways, but there was still experimentation, and I always felt like they had quality musicianship. It's funny, I always, back then, I thought Jello was some trained, I thought he must be some opera singer or something, the way he'd carry those notes, but I remember I've seen interviews with him where he's like, "Oh, I didn't know nothing." It's like, but he's got a definitely unique vocal style and great lyrics always. So, not really gonna get into the post Dead Kennedys stuff, but I'd say Lard. When that came out, that was that's one that I've hung on to for a lot of years. I'll break that record out. The first Lard release. If I can find it, I'm sure I can. Right by Bill Laswell. Live off. Lard. Okay. Yeah, so when this one came out, The Power of Lard, I was probably 16 or so, and that's when I was like, let me think here, 89, I would have been 17. And that's when I was like really kind of going through a transition between like the listening to hardcore skate punk stuff in my teen years and what I thought of as more mature music at that time. I was getting into the Cabaret Voltaires and the Ministry, which is a tie to this record here because it's Al Jorgensen and Ministry. So for me, it was like, and Jello he was a big idol of mine already, and and even if I wasn't so much into the hardcore anymore, there's like the Jello, Henry Rollins, Ian McKay, HR, anybody like that is just like a role model and somebody that I really admire and look up to, regardless of what I happen to be listening to at the time. So anyway, yeah, when they did this project together, I was real excited about that. And I've always dug this one a lot. Power of Lard. Time to Meld is like a super sludging through the mud, down tempo one. But yeah, these are cool songs. The Power of Lard was like, well, oh yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. Is what I was thinking. I'm getting into this more mature, sound dance club type stuff, and then Ministry, who I was really getting into at that time, they start doing all this hardcore stuff, and it's like, well, okay, that's pretty cool. So now Culture Clash, that's basically what Culture Clash is all about on a musical level. It's like bringing all. I mean, it's about bringing people together on a bigger level than that, but it's on a musical level and just trying to represent for all the different flavors, basically rebel music, the way I look at it, like Bob Marley. I mean, it's protest music, and sure, it's nothing new. Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, and I'm sure there's countless from history. You know, I'm sure music's been a tool of protest or carrying information for a long time. But anyway, the kind of forgot where I was going with that. Yeah. All right. Well, that's about all the records I really have to discuss right now. Oh, I know one more I can talk about. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I could just start breaking out Alternative Tentacles records for hours, but I'm not gonna do that right now. Maybe another episode. There's definitely a label that opened my eyes through compilations like Let Them Eat Jelly Beans, or from actual releases. You know, a lot of bands, Butthole Surfers. First started on Alternative Tentacles, DOA. Anyway, this is the Terminal City Ricochet soundtrack, which is a movie that Jello had a role in. I didn't see it at the time it was out. I remember I ended up seeing it on TV like years and years later. I saw it. I didn't even realize that's what it was until I saw Jello, and I was like, oh, this must be Terminal City Ricochet. Yeah, this compilation, it's got the very cool little collaboration of Keith LeBlanc of Tackhead. He's actually the original drummer from the Sugar Hill Records studio band and used to do Sugar Hill Gang, Grandmaster Flash, did like White Lines and The Message. So he was the drummer from that band, and well, Tackhead were all the foundation of that band. Doug Wimbish and Skip McDonald, the other two members. Let me, I'll put this on. Just for a minute. Yeah, so this was on a rhythm, on a Tackhead rhythm that had been previously used. Song called Object Subject, or Subject Object. I think Object Subject by Keith LeBlanc. Also on Mark Stewart's Hell is Empty, I believe it's called. Drew a blank on it for a second. So it's a kind of like an example of like in dub reggae or dancehall, where they have the same rhythm, same principle more or less. Oh yeah, I did not have the Ableton hooked up. Hang on a second. All right. Just a moment while I set up Ableton. Okay, I'll let this run for just a moment here.
We interrupt this program with a special bulletin. This territory is now under martial law. All constitutional rights have been suspended. Stay in your homes. Do not attempt to contact loved ones, insurance agents, or attorneys. Shut up. Do not attempt to think, or depression may occur. Stay in your homes. Curfew is at 7 p.m. sharp after work.
Okay, that is all that I'm going to run of that one for now. Just to, I may have already got a copyright strike, but trying to avoid it if possible. Anyway, I think that's about all I've got to say for now. I might be back on here in a little while. I can't think of anything right offhand that I needed to bring up, but we do still have the Infinite Felines fundraiser going. We're working on getting these cats. We got the cat cam in the other room. Working on getting them all spayed and neutered. We've got one that's... She's still nursing there. She's the next... She's going to be one of the next ones to get done. So that's Miana there. But yeah, she nurses her kittens and she keeps doing it for a long time. So hopefully we get her pregnant. I mean, get her fixed before she gets pregnant again. God damn. Anyway, yeah, we're gonna be working on that over the next week or so. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get off here for now. But thank you for tuning in. And if you did, be sure and like, follow, share, all those things. And that's it. Peace out.